right, so today we're going to be writing multiplicative equations from tables. So remember from yesterday, we have our dry mix. And remember, our dependent variable is our y's, and our independent variables are our x, okay? So remember, and multiplicative relationships show a multiplying relationship here, okay? So we are going to be given a table and we're going to find a rule, but we're going to follow this riddle. We're going to check it twice before it's right, okay? And that's important because sometimes we don't necessarily know what to do with the first one here. So we need to ask ourselves, how do we get from 2 to 6? Now we could say add 4 or we could say times 3. That's why we're going to check it twice. So I'm going to look here. I'm going to say 2 times 3 equals 6, but does 7 times 3 equal 21? Yes. Okay. 15 times 3 does equal 45, and 22 times 3 does equal 66. So that rule does work all the way down the table, so the adding 4 would not work. So when we write our rule, we always want to start with y. So we're going to start with y equals, and what is it that we are doing to the x? Okay, we're multiplying by 3. So I'm going to put 3x, because remember, when you have the 3 and the x together, that means you are multiplying 3 times whatever x is to get the answer of y. So our rule here would be y equals 3x. Okay, let's do this again. Here, if you have tables going side to side, remember you're always going to want to go from x to y. So we need to ask ourselves, how do we get from x to y? Well, getting from 0 to 0 doesn't necessarily help us. That's why we always want to check it twice, okay? So now I can ask myself, okay, how do I get from 2 to 11? Okay, I could say add 20, but then to get to 3.5 to 38.5, adding 20 wouldn't help me there. So I could also say times 11. So 2 times 11 is 22. I'm not really sure what 3.5 times 11 is. We could work it out, but we can do 5 times 11 in our head, and 5 times 11 is 55. So I did check it twice. So I'm confident my rule is y equals, and then since we're multiplying x by 11, we'd put 11x, because that means 11 times the value of x. Okay? All right, now let's look here. We have a table again, but remember, we always want to go from our x to our y, our independent to dependent, right? So I'm going to go from my x to my y, which is my dry is my y, and mix is my x. So remember, what normally would be my input, my x, is my independent. The y is my dependent, right? So same thing when we graph. Our y will be dry. So our dependent, and then we have mix. So our x is our independent, okay? So I'm going to look at my rule here. I don't know exactly how to get from 0 to 0, but seeing that it's 0 to 0, I know it's going to be multiplying. It's a multiplicative relationship. So 1 times 5 is 5, 3 times 5 is 15, and 3 times 5 is 30. So I know to get the value of d, I have to multiply the value of t by 5. So d equals 5t. Now when I graph it, remember my x and then my y. So I would start at my origin, which is 0, 0. Then we'd go over to 1 and up 5. Remember, this is 1. This would be 5. And then 3, 15. So I would skip 2, go to 3. My 15 is in between my 10 and my 20. So we'd go over to 3, which is my x, and up to 15, which is my y. And then 6, 30. We'd go over to 6 and up to 30. And remember, if it's making that straight line or that linear line there, you know that you're doing it correctly. Okay? All right, now we're going to be given the graph, and we're going to have to fill in the table and find a rule. So I'm going to go ahead and label my dry and my mix to show which one's going to be my dependent and my independent, right? So remember, dry and then mix. Okay, so here, I know my graph starts at 0, 0. So x and y both meet at 0 and 0. Then I'm going to find my dot. I'm going to follow my dot. When x is 1, y is 2. So I'm going to put 1 for my x and 2 for my y. When 2 is x, y is 4. Okay, I put enough information in there for me to check it twice. So now I need to figure out, how am I getting from x to y? So we know we're multiplying because both x and y are at 0, 0, right? So I know 1 times 2 equals 2, and 2 times 2 equals 4. So I'm taking the value of x and multiplying it by 2 to get my y. So my rule would be y equals 2 times the value of x. Okay? And then here it says, what are my independent variables? So remember, your independent are your x values. So my independent variables would be 0, 1, and 2. All right, now we're going to do one last one. So again, my table's still going side to side, but I still have my dry for my y and mix for my x. So remember, mix for x, dry for y, because x are your independent, y is your dependent. All right, I'm going to start at my origin, so I know x and y are both 0, so I know I'm going to be multiplying. And then I see here when x is 1, y is 3. When x is 2, y is 6. See how I'm just going with my dot here. Go to my dot, my x is 2, y is 6. So I see to get from x to y, I am multiplying by 3. Because 1 times 3 is 3. And 2 times 3 is 6. So my rule would be y equals 3 times x, or just 3x. And then the question here is, what is my dependent values? Remember, d is your dependent, which is your y. So those would be 0, 3, and 6.